everyone, this is Lena Kraus and welcome to another Hero Arts card making video. Today we're gonna make card using stencil that has clean lines so we can build some dimension, and I'm using the graphic mountain stencil along with Where to Next stamp set to add sentiment. So I have some smooth deluxe smooth white cardstock, and I have pitch black cardstock. So here's the stencil. This is the back front side. This is the back side. So I'll be using from the back side because I want that sun to be on the right. I'll be using my ink blending brushes and few reactive inks. I'll use green apple, key lime fizz, lemon drop, and pool party. So let's get started. I'm using my Misty stamp positioning tool to line up the corner, but you can use anything that you have handy with a straight corner, or even you can just line and secure the stencil with the tape to your paper. I have half A4 sheet of uh, white cardstock here. I'm just ink blending that green apple. And I'm not worrying that it's gonna go over the lines because we're gonna cut that out. That's how we're gonna build some layers. So for each area, we're gonna stencil just that area. Maybe again, we're not gonna worry about if it goes over the lines because we're gonna cut out every layer. So I'm cutting the first layer. So next I have off camera and ink blended the rest. So we have the valleys, I used key lime fizz, the sun I used lemon drop, and the sky I used the pool party. So here are all the layers and you can see how they're cut out. So before we move assembling those layers, I will stamp a sentiment from Where to Next stamp set. I'm using the sentiment that says Adventure Awaits, but you can use any sentiment of your choice. I'm stamping on pitch black cardstock and I'm using the embossing and watermark ink. I'm stamping a couple times to make sure that I have nice coverage. So once I have stamped that, I'm adding white embossing powder. And I will heat set. Before I apply the heat to my paper, I'll preheat that heat tool and then add some heat mainly from the back side. This I've found out that that's how I get the most even melting of the embossing powder. So I wanted that sentiment to pop up a little bit more, so I'm putting it back in my stamp positioning tool in my Misty and stamping over again a couple of times with embossing and watermark ink and adding more embossing powder. Next I will heat set that again to melt the embossing powder. Okay, I think that looks good. Now let's move to assembling our card. So the stencil is about 6 by 6, so all my ink blended pieces are 5.5 wide, but I wanted to make portrait oriented card instead of a landscape. So I'm just trimming the first piece first with the sun because I wanted that to be to the far right. And then I'm just lining up the rest of the layer. Since I use a corner to line up my stencil with my paper, it's very easy to line up those pieces. So if I trim it on one side, I have the other side, it's lining up. And also I'm using tape on the back to make sure that I lined up that correctly and doesn't move when I put it in my paper trimmer. So you can see here I'm just making sure that everything lines properly. And then I'll trim it to 4.25 wide. So I did first the sun, next the sky, now I'm doing the valleys, and the last the mountains. So this is also about 6 inches tall. So here I will trim also, this is the top of the sky because I want that to be on top of my card, on the very top. And I have a top folded Dove White note card. I will use that one to assemble all the layers onto and as a base for our card. So next I'm checking if the sun layers lines up properly. It was a little bit wider, so just trimmed it off. So now let's adhere that layer, I'm adding foam tape. So this is also another way how I build dimension. So I added the foam tape. I also added liquid adhesive so it gives me a little bit more wiggle room to make sure that that's nice and straight. I'm just trimming off the excess because the sky layer is 5.5 tall. So we have a little bit overhanging from the sun layer, and I trimmed that off with my scissors. Next, we're going to add the valleys. So I didn't want the card to be very bulky. So for this layer, I'm just using liquid adhesive, the Hero Arts Precision Glue, and adhere it directly. I trim off the excess. Now for the trees, here I had a little piece that was from that I didn't trim very nicely. So for this piece, I'll add again foam tape to add a little bit more dimension. So we have only 2 layers of foam tape instead of 4 if we add it to all of the layers, including the base layer with the sky. So I'm adding little pieces there, and I'll also add some liquid glue to give me a little bit more movement before I commit to the placement of that layer. Just trimming off some of that foam tape that was overhanging. Remove all the backing, added that liquid adhesive, and I'm adding it to my card. We have again a little bit overhanging. You can see on my back side there is some stenciling. I made a mistake, so I just turned the paper over. Once we add it to our card base, no one will ever see it. So our the main element of the card is all assembled, and we just need to add a sentiment. So I have that embossed sentiment, and just using my paper trimmer to cut it to a strip. And then to add a little bit of dimension and a little bit more sturdiness, I'm adding I'm cutting 2 more strips of the pitch black cardstock, and I will adhere it behind. Those were a little bit thinner, narrower than the main piece with the sentiment, to add a little bit of dimension and more sturdiness. So I'm using my ruler to make sure that I adhere that nice and straight. I added the Hero Arts Precision Glue on the back of that sentiment, and I added it to my card. To finish off my card, I'm just adding few enamel dots, black enamel dots from the Neutrals and Enamel Dot pack. And that finishes our card for today. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching this video. Don't forget to visit our blog for more ideas and more inspiration, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. See you next time. Bye.